Are you tired of being ignored and taken for granted by Team Red and Team Blue? Then you are already part of the exhausted majority, the real political supermajority in America today. If you roll your eyes and you try to tune out the news when loud partisan pundits are constantly fighting to be the most outraged voice in the public square, you are not alone. This exhausted majority includes politically engaged center-left moderates and equally engaged right-leaning moderates, plus everyone in between who is fed up with over a decade of political chaos. We, the exhausted majority, we have the power to guide the American government away from the wild policy swings after partisans from each side seize control from the other and towards a sensible, blended compromise from both sides. I don't pretend to be perfectly politically centrist, but I love America and the aspirational vision of a more perfect union in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Like almost all of my fellow members of the exhausted majority, I believe we are the greatest nation in human history. Like most non-extremist Americans, I have a blend of center-left and right-of-center preferences and beliefs. I might prefer a 70-30 compromise agenda leaning left of center, but someone who prefers a 70-30 right-of-center blend is my ally, not my adversary. This channel is dedicated to informing and empowering the exhausted majority. Let's combine moderates who prefer a 70-30 center-left compromise agenda with those who prefer a 70-30 right-of-center blended agenda, and give hope to the vast number of non-aligned centrists who are often disengaged and ready to give up on our overheated, dysfunctional, and hyper-partisan political climate. Together, we are a supermajority. If we can unite and inspire this broad middle that both political parties ignore and take for granted, we can create a practical, powerful coalition based on compromise that resembles the generally competent style of governance we remember from the 20th century. You know, before partisan AM talk radio and the 24-hour TV news cycle discovered you could get rich selling angry, partisan rage. We, the exhausted majority, can overthrow the extreme partisans from both sides. I'm talking about the partisans who are currently in control of the steering wheel of American government, careening towards a socialist, rain-swollen ditch on the left one year, then towards an illiberal authoritarian cliff the next year. From my moderate center-left perspective, the danger of moving too far to the right feels more concerning. But if you feel the risk of socialism is more frightening, that's fine with me. As long as we agree that both extremes must be avoided, we're allies, not adversaries. We have to set aside the modest but real disagreements within this middle coalition and restore government of the people, by the people, for the people. We can replace the current style of government that is controlled by the proverbial swamp, full of nameless billionaires and big business lobbyists who purchase policies primarily benefiting the wealthy and powerful, leaving only meager, trickle-down benefits for everyday Americans struggling to achieve the American dream that our elders were much more able to achieve decades ago. Frankly, we've all been brainwashed by a standard story of American politics we were taught in school, informed by news media, and constantly discussed on our social media feeds. They all claim our politics are strictly binary. You know, a country split perfectly down the middle between two constantly warring and uncompromising tribes. But that mathematical formula, it is a mirage. I have spent years exploring and researching the massive and diverse public opinion research data so I could learn and understand the truth about American political beliefs rather than blindly accept whatever the partisan pundits from either side want us to believe. My research sources include respected, nonpartisan organizations like Gallup, Pew, and More in Common. There are two clear conclusions from all of their data. First, on a broad spectrum of issues, healthy majorities of Americans support policies, values, and beliefs squarely in the middle of the partisan extremes that get most of the attention. Second, all of their research into the actual beliefs of our fellow Americans demonstrates that extreme partisans have monopolized the national conversation, drawing out a much more complex reality and creating the appearance of hopeless division that leaves political power in the hands of the minority extremes on both sides. Pew Research first asked this interesting question back in 1958. How much of the time do you trust the government in Washington to do what is right? Back then, 73% of Americans said just about always or most of the time. Today, that number has collapsed to just 17%. At that level, the social glue that binds us together starts to dissolve. Outrage becomes the primary political currency, and people start viewing their own neighbors not as opponents, but as existential enemies. Reversing this collapse requires a new mental political map. We have to stop diagnosing America through a false left versus right binary lens. More in Common's research is finding that labels like race or class are becoming much less useful at predicting how we vote. What actually drives our behavior is a deeper psychological architecture, our core beliefs and our sense of group belonging. When you segment the electorate by those core beliefs, that 50-50 binary completely disappears. It's replaced by this spectrum of 7 distinct ideological tribes. At the edges are the wings. On the left, we find progressive activists. On the right, we see traditional conservatives and devoted conservatives. These 3 groups are the most rigid. While they make up only 1/3 of the population, they generate almost all of our political noise. But look at the center 4 ideological tribes that represent 67% of the public. These tribes, according to More in Common, are traditional liberals, passive liberals, the politically disengaged, and moderates. And together, More in Common calls them the exhausted majority. That's what inspired my name for this channel, after all. That 50-50 binary mirage is only visible when you focus on the 33% dominating political dialogue. The real supermajority is hiding in plain sight between the loud partisan tribes on either extreme. Now, I have little doubt that members of the exhausted majority have real disagreements on important issues and policies. But what unites us is far more powerful. A belief in the basic decency of Americans, the idea of a more perfect union, shared American values like fairness, individual liberty and rights, and a government that obeys the law, plus a literal fatigue with polarization. You can see that fatigue in the data. While barely half of the partisan wings favor listening and compromise, fully 65% of the exhausted majority believe it is a political necessity. For the political wings, ideology is identity. To them, compromise isn't just a policy shift, it's a threat to who they are. But the center is pragmatic. They tend to evaluate a solution based on results rather than how well it fits into a rigid worldview. This trait, ideological flexibility, is perhaps the best tool capable of breaking the nation's current gridlock. Because the pragmatic center outnumber the extremes 2-1, we hold the latent power to move past this false binary logic and create a new political environment where political power originates from the ideological middle instead of the extremes. Now let's take a look at my modest proposal, Jonathan Swift style, because I understand how truly ambitious it is. I'm convinced that the exhausted majority can bring the country back together again based on a 70-30 governing agenda rooted in practical compromise, merging and blending different philosophical approaches. The 70% provides foundational protection, investment in infrastructure and education, and a social safety net for the workers and the elderly. The other 30% integrates conservative priorities, national security both abroad and at the border, and values market efficiency and private enterprise, and most important of all, fiscal discipline. A flexible middle electorate can even tolerate the inverse, 70% conservative and 30% liberal, because the exhausted majority prioritizes results over ideological purity. Let me remind you how that 70% trust floor was hit. It is because the loudest tribes have dominated the language of political debate for decades. Reversing this will require the 67% exhausted majority to stop allowing the partisan extremes to define issues in terms of inflexible absolutes. When the exhausted majority uses its mathematical way to demand flexibility, the gridlock that defines modern politics stops being a law of nature and starts being a choice, and we can make different and better choices. If my hopeful and admittedly ambitious vision of American politics resonates with you, don't lose hope. Please take the time to explore my other videos that break down Supreme Court decisions reshaping presidential power and examine electoral reforms that could end the redistricting wars in Congress. In the interest of full transparency, which is a core value of this channel, I used AI tools to organize my research sources and to fine-tune my script after I wrote my first draft version from scratch. I eagerly look forward to reading and responding to your comments and suggestions. Please like, subscribe, and share these videos to inform, inspire, and give hope to the exhausted majority. Stay sane, keep them honest, and never lose hope.